I found that personal trainers or exercise coaches, whatever you want to call them, really are good. They make good stroke coaches. First of all, they're used to coaching. They're used to working with people one-on-one. The other thing is they know a lot about muscles, um, and they know a lot about body motion from sports or strength training. Um, I
Yeah, but we have to remember that not everybody has, their financial situation, they fall where they fall, and not many can, or I know I certainly can't afford a one-on-one sports trainer.
yep. No, I know insurance doesn't pay for it either. And
Yep.
my experience was based on um, I had a friend who was paralyzed and broke his neck in a surfing accident, and he presented very much like stroke. And um, another friend of his is a personal trainer, and she and I worked with him for about a year. And I was teaching her stuff about stroke, but she was teaching me stuff all the time about muscles and movement. And she had a bunch of, I'd say, after hours, I'd say, hey, I'm having trouble with this. She said, well, do you do stair crabs? And I'm going, stair crabs? What the heck is a stair crab? So she showed me. Boy, they're not easy to do. You can't do them if if he's had a stroke, unless you're pretty far down the path of recovery. But I've just found that she knew a lot of exercises. I've been doing bird dogs, and she said I wanted to shoot her a video of her doing bird dogs because she does them really well. And she said, "You want the two extensions?" I said, "What are the two extensions?" And so she showed me. So I just found him really knowledgeable. And
Yeah.
you're right, Dennis. No insurance company's gonna pay for it, you know. And
Well,
it is 30, 40, $50 an hour. So
a big part of stroke therapy, and I think is a component of stroke therapy, is probably a quarter of it should be motivation.
yeah,
You know,
I agree.
and and the therapists that I saw working with the patients that I saw, they were not motivating at all.
That's
You know,
right.
they might put you on that little bicycle, just the pedals, and then they turn around and I don't know what they do. They sit at their desk while you pedal for 15 minutes. Well, wait a minute.
Babysitting you.
I sat in the therapy room with these people, and I was like Coach Lombardi, coaching this lady on, getting her excited about doing it. Because let's face it, it's monotonous. It's boring.
Well, that's one area where my friend, she was a friend of both myself and Henry. Kathy, the personal trainer, was really good because she would call out things. For example, she had a pull-up machine. You could put, like, if you weigh 170 pounds, you could put 70 pounds of weights on it. Now you're pulling up 100. So you could set it to, like, how much you wanted to do a pull-up. And she would call them out, and she'd give Henry a number, and she'd go, good, good, good. She was talking all the time,
Exactly.
all the time. I mean, not quite like motor mouth, and not quite like just saying anything for the heck of it, but calling stuff out. Okay, two more. You got this. Come on. There you go. Go, 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 go. As he'd like strain to get his chin up high enough to count it as a pull-up. So um, one other place that you might be able to get it, Dennis, for not so much is, well, I belong to a gym. It's kind of on hiatus because of COVID. I've been thinking about maybe starting it up again. Um, Anyhow, at the gym they have, um, oh, this confusing word. It's not physiatrists. Those are actually medical people. They've got sports coaches and
Kinesiologist.
what?
Kinesiologist.
Yeah, and you can access them once a quarter for an hour for free as a part of the membership. Um, the reason I belong there is they have a therapy pool, and so I was always taking, bless you, I always was taking stroke survivors to the therapy pool. It was a little more expensive. It was actually owned by the hospital system, and on the backside of the therapy pool was one of their physical therapy outlets, and they used the therapy pool as well. So there's
Yeah, ironically, where I go to PT it's a gym owned by the hospital system, and that's where I do my physical therapy. So you have the benefits of some of that.
yeah, that's the same as this. This is owned by the hospital system, and
Yep.
and but it's it's a basic gym. But they also have some wellness programs like that coaching thing. You can sign up for $79 a month. That's pretty reasonable. And you get 2 hour sessions a week, I think. So that'd be 8 sessions for uh, 79 bucks. I mean, they got to pay the person that's working with you more than $10 an hour. I guess they find that people pay $79 and come 3 times or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly how that works. Um, but not everybody goes to a gym that's part of a hospital system. How do you do that at Planet Fitness for $10 a month? I don't know that you can. Uh,
Right. Everyone's situation is different.
I'm lucky our local community banded together with the hospital, the school system, and the city, and they built a $49 million facility that cost me $45 a month.
wow.
Olympic-sized pool, therapy pool, 2 whirlpools, full-on gym, basketball courts, everything.
That's really reasonable because the gym that I belong to is like, I think it's 59 for a single and 99 for a family. And if
Yeah.
you're over 65, they give you 10% off or something. So it's, I didn't really care for a couple reasons. But the number one was the fact they had that therapy pool because I could take stroke survivors there, and that was just invaluable. In fact, they let me take stroke survivors there who were not members of the gym. How
Yeah.
about that?
This therapy pool is pretty cool because it even has a wheelchair ramp on it in it, so you
Interesting.
could actually take people into the pool. But I joined it right before COVID, and then I suspended my subscription because of COVID. Now I need to join back up.
Mine's suspended too, and I've been thinking about it's time to go back. Um, so, yeah, maybe we should both sign back up. They put it on hold and waive the membership fees again.
Yep.
But of course, you start up the monthly stuff. And guess what? You need a way to get there. That's a big problem for a lot of stroke survivors. Transport.
Absolutely.
There's some
Yeah, that's
good transport that I've found. We have a local uh, like volunteer transport system, but they don't do wheelchairs because they're mostly retired people. Now, I mean, I'm retired and older than most of them. And I had a stroke, and I can put a 30-pound wheelchair in the back of my car, no problem. But I can't make the rules for the local guys. So if you have a wheelchair, you jump up to what they call med trans, medical transport. And unless you're getting, Medicare disability or something to pay for that, that's really pricey. You know, this,
I just you just sort of sparked an interesting idea, and I'm gonna bring it up to the therapist at the local hospital here about just trying to start a group, like a support group, and you meet at this place, and without a trainer, You just sort of support each other.
Well, or you could have like, one trainer for the group. If you got 4 or 5 people together, that
Exactly.
would cut the costs down. I have this idea for a stroke survivor kind of group home. It's like 6 master bedroom suites around a living room, kitchen.
A real living facility.
Yeah, I also built in like a therapy room with mirrors and bars on the walls and pads and stuff in my idea. And, the idea was you could get a physical therapist to come around once or twice a week, and sure, you got to pay them $100 or whatever for an hour, hour and a half but you're splitting it, 4 ways or 6 ways. So it, becomes a lot more affordable. The main idea is the caregiver. I had a stroke survivor that was in assisted living, and they were just, $6,000 a month. And what did she need?
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't cook, and she couldn't put out her pills or her mouthwash. That's it. Other than that, she was transferring herself, dressing herself. Oh, she was still getting help in the shower, but she said that with the bars and stuff, she would be okay with that. So I was looking into getting her out of there before she ran out of money, and who knows what was, would happen. And those were the only things that she needed. The caregiver once a day, 365 days a year with a 2 or even a 4 hour minimum, man, that'll eat up your disability. She had big time disability, couple $1,000 because she worked real hard and made a lot of money in her life. But most people don't have that. It put a big dent in, I was trying to budget based on her disability, buy a accessible condo and all that. So, you know, yeah, if you could somehow gang together or not need one, or if you had like, you were talking, Joe, about how you were pumping everybody up. Get somebody who likes to coach and pump people up on the mental side, and get somebody, maybe like me. I don't mean me in where you live, but somebody who's knows a little bit about some of the things that get assigned to you in stroke recovery and can maybe make some suggestions or whatever, or split a personal trainer. If you had a group of 6 people, $60 an hour becomes $10 an hour. So,
It's a good thought. When I go to my next stroke, my local stroke support group, I'm going to bring it up.
are they having them again?
They started last month. I was not able to go because I had a family situation, but they started them again last month.
Well, good. It'll be interesting to see what that does to all these stroke survivor support group Zoom meetings. Because basically, they got started because we weren't meeting in person. On the other hand, some of the stuff with the pandemic, like Zooming, I think is going to survive because guess
Yeah, I
what?
do too.
The 5 of us couldn't have met like anywhere, pre-COVID because we live, Trish lives in St. Louis and I live in South Carolina, and Dennis, you live where? In New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New Jersey?
Northern New Jersey, basically New York City.
Right. And Joe, you live in the Illinois?
Midwest.
What?
I live 100 miles east of Chicago.
Right. So, we're geographically 1,000 miles apart apiece.
Well, when it comes to that, in 2018, I designed 6 rooms for Mazda Motors throughout the United States, were basically Zoom rooms, teleconferencing rooms. So they had their 6 regional headquarters, and they put the same electronics in each one, and then they were able to also reach out to all the different Mazda dealers throughout the United States, because they were switching. Instead of sending their reps to introduce a new car to each dealership, they wanted to do it all via the internet.
Right. So you recommended the AV equipment?
Yeah, I designed it. You know, I
No, you
put a
did.
list
Is that
of
what you do?
everything that had to be used and how you wired everything. And the company that I worked for, they'd work nationwide and they installed all these. So I did all the wiring diagrams on how everything went together.
Interesting, because as a video engineer, I got asked to do that in, corporate conference rooms and places like that, because we did a lot with projections and meeting events. So if you do events, then the corporations sometimes turn to you and ask you to help with designing. Uh,
Well, a lot of corporations use a company that I worked for.
what
And,
company?
Mazda wanted to go with one company so every room was the same across the United States.
Right, right. That's the right way to do it. That way you only have to write one manual for the room.
True.
Of course, you're going to get um, you're going to get the calls from the people who don't read the manual, of course. Um,
Well, the technology's here. And what happened was with COVID, it just accelerated the advancement of the technology.
mhm.
I used to do a lot of classrooms, and we had a lot of school districts that are going to virtual learning. Well, they were slowly rolling this out, but of course, COVID accelerated that process.
Well, I just had an interesting idea. Because we're talking about how do you get good coaching and good physical therapy, like when you run out of insurance or you have difficulty getting transported to your local physical therapy place because you don't have anybody and you can't afford Medtrans and all those kinds of issues. And it's kind of how I got started on this whole thing with, being a video guy and helping stroke survivors was I wanted to actually watch TV and do physical therapy along with people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my idea was we could try one. I had a one-on-one session recently with a guy in England, and I did some stuff like I got, I was trying to show him stuff. And I'd never done it before, but I went and I stepped back here up against the chairs. I was showing him arm stuff. So all of a sudden, I could show, uh, I was showing him arm stuff and I know where the position is now. So, I mean, there's a possibility. I don't know if people would want it, but one thing we could try for these meetings would be like have a, well, I was thinking have a do it a long session like chair yoga, where
Mm-hmm.
you plan the exercises. The problem is you got people in wheelchairs and people that are fine tuning their walk. So you got somebody who is working on standing up and somebody who's walking pretty well is trying to get rid of, drop foot and circumduction and, some of the issues that we all run into. So I don't know quite how you would make it universal. Um, I've actually, along these lines, my sister-in-law teaches chair yoga. She's got a couple of people. She's 71, like I am, and she's got a couple of people, friends her age, who want it. But I think part of the reason that she's continuing to do it on Sunday mornings is I show up. And so I've asked her actually to do one that's, I got some trouble with a couple of things she does. So my idea was to talk to her and do one on Zoom and record it, and then I could put it on YouTube, and then you could have a 45-minute yoga workout that's aimed at stroke survivors. I mean, I know Leslie Hadley does it every Friday at 11 o'clock, and you get it different every week and live and all that. But so I'm thinking about doing a meeting with my sister-in-law and just be me and her. She'll tell me what to do and I'll do it, and you can watch it and do it along at home. Because
Well,
it's aimed at, you know, I've started not holding on to the chair in some things, but everything's aimed at either doing it in the chair or standing and holding on to the chair, unless like when I first started, I couldn't go into a warrior pose, so I'd use the chair. I'd balance with one finger.
The issue here that I see is number one, the facilities that you want to reach out to, because most of the people that we need that would be great to reach out to with chair yoga or bed yoga or any yoga is most of those people are in a nursing home or a hospital, some type of medical facility. And when I was in a nursing home, they wouldn't even allow me to have internet access. They didn't provide, they do now, but back then they didn't provide internet access to the patients, which I think internet access, so they could stream different things is extremely important. And a tablet or an iPad, so they could sit there and watch chair yoga or bed yoga, or they could have somebody talk to them about what's going on with them. I know there's a lot of liability there, but as you know, when you're laying there as a stroke patient, you have no idea. Everybody has an idea of what a stroke is, but they have no really idea of how the rubber meets the road and what you have to do to overcome it.
Right. Right. I'd have gone crazy if I didn't have internet access when I was in the hospital, because everybody went to bed at 5 o'clock after they ate dinner at 4 o'clock, and I couldn't do that. I mean, I didn't mind eating my dinner cold, so they'd bring it at 4 o'clock. I'd eat it at 5:07 before they changed shifts because the new people would throw it out. So
I had a nurse that slipped me the access code. And then that was good for about 2 months. Then the administrators found out that I had the access code and they changed the code.
Mm-hmm. And she didn't slip it to you again?
No. And, the sad thing of it is for me, the internet, and for you, the internet was your lifeline.
Well, think about if you're in a wheelchair and you can't get to physical therapy due to transfer issues. I mean, there are people like
100%,
that.
yeah. Well, in the nursing home I was at, they had a therapy room. They had that adjustable mat that could raise and lower.
Mm-hmm.
That had about 15 boxes on it. And then they had the parallel bars so you could walk on. That had a bunch of boxes on it. So it's like all the leftover storage, that's where they put it, was in the therapy room. So all these tools that they had in the therapy room were not accessible to the therapist or to the patients.
Well, so I've got this garage. It's a 2-car garage that instead of being 24 by 24, it's 24 by 36. I've got a 12-foot by 24-foot office in the back. And I had a, what they call mini split air conditioner in there for the last 12 years, and it died, and I needed a new one. I was looking at them, buying a new one this morning, and I had wired the garage for that, and I was thinking, I don't really use this garage. I could have a 24 by 24 therapy room. I've already got 3/4-inch mats I could put down on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I need some bars and stuff, and I'm thinking, how do I get people over here?
Well, here's another problem, Ralph, because you're not trained. I'm not sure if you can be licensed.
Yeah, you got liability issues.
Oh, I'm sure. Except I've worked with 13 local stroke survivors, and I've never had anybody sign a release or anything. I mean,
No, I'm sure you can work through it, but you got to consider those liability issues and insurance issues.
I'm sure there's state requirements and all that stuff. I applaud you for trying to do it. I think it's great.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to. I was just thinking, it's already wired up with 220 for when I wired for the first mini split. I had the electrician put a box right next to it on the other side of the wall,
Yep.
so they could be on each side of the wall, and the garage is all fully insulated. But I don't know. Should I, at 71 years old, should I be taking on stroke physical therapy in the space? I don't know. seems to me, it could do more good through these meetings or things where you can get a lot of people to benefit.
I think instead of having it at your personal home, go to a Planet Fitness or something like that,
Right, try and
and
partner
work with
with
them.
somebody.
Work with them in a place that has all the insurances in place in case someone slips and falls and all that.
But then they won't let me in. See, I've run into things where I've taken stroke survivors and they wouldn't let me in the back. Other places have let me in the back. One place, the guy's family signed me in. Next thing I knew, the physical therapist was saying, if you want to, you can come to Stevens Physical Therapy. There's a guy I built the parallel bars for because he was not going to be able to get, his stroke was so bad he couldn't transfer. I
Mhm.
weren't even sure med transfer was going to be able to transfer him. So he was going to go home and have nothing but in-home physical therapy. So I thought, well, how's he going to stand up? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, that's the one thing he needs to do. And she said, I know. So I built a set of parallel bars.
Fantastic.
Um, I don't regret working in person with the people. It's very rewarding and it helps them a lot. But it's really compared to doing virtual stuff, it's really slow. If you can impart some information that somebody can take and run with it, that's to hundreds or thousands of people. That's really valuable. When you work one on one, it's very rewarding. It's very good for that person, but it ties you up big time. When I was at the peak of this, I had four people that I was seeing in person, and so I'm here to tell you, I always spend an hour and 15 minutes twice a week with each of them. That's like 10 hours, but with all the driving and planning and whatever, I mean, I could.
That's a full-time job.
Yeah, it was a full-time job. I was thinking, what happens if I get a fifth? I'm not sure I want to take on a fifth. I could do it, but starting to stretch me was pretty thin because one of the I had another stroke survivor at that time that I was working with, and he had medical problems, and we had to stop doing PT. But I was taking him to doctor's appointments at least twice a week, all the time. Took him to unbelievable amount, 150 in a year, 40 days of infusion, 40 straight days of infusion. Anyway, um, it's an ongoing issue. Um, Phil, welcome. I don't know if I hope you can hear us. Don't know if you're willing to talk. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but if you have something you'd like to hear us discuss, we'd be interested in that. We've been discussing um, getting access to other types of physical therapy other than traditional, using a personal trainer, coach, trying to put together a group at the gym, those kinds of things. So welcome and speak up if you got anything you want to hear us
Oh
talk about.
yeah, Phil, if nothing else, Phil, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah,
Where you from? When was your stroke? What kind of stroke and where you're at right now?
Hi there, everybody. Philip Theodore, San Jose, California. Stroke was 11 or um, 2017, November, November 2017. Um, Hemorrhagic stroke. I guess the first surgery was to stop that bleed, and then they had the second surgery was to take off part of my skull and go in there and fix whatever they had to fix. And I did. I mean, there was like I have no peripheral vision on the right side. I was sort of quote okay, but then January of last year, last year, January, I had a seizure. And that really has messed me up. Many ways. And I have a Christmas for 5 weeks prior was Christmas. On Christmas Eve, I was on my mountain bike, and I had a crash. I hit water on a bridge, and bad crash, and I broke my bad arm and bad hip. So it's been a
Can't
fairly
win for losing.
no, and I am where I was triathlete, and yeah, I was quite fit, and I don't know if you know what an Ironman is.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've done 5 of them, and that's just we were just sort of like that. That was just our status quo. Was once you get in that kind of shape, it's easier to stay in that shape than to get back into that shape.
Oh
And
yeah.
so we were always, that's what we did. And to go from that to this is fucked, to put it lightly.
Understood.
I have a friend I should introduce you to, Phil. His name is Marcus Rosenlinger, and Marcus was a triathlete. He did several Ironmans. He did one 6 months before his stroke, and he had his stroke due to Vioxx, which I think was something he was taking for like his ankle or something. They've taken it off the market, and he got some money in a class action suit. But of course, he'd be happy to give back the money and get back his pre-stroke life. But he had a pretty horrible time of it. He was locked in for a month, in the hospital for 6 months, in bed for 18 months. They stood him up at 3 years. Took him 4 years to get to a walker, and 4 years later, he kind of got rid of the walker, except in public. You guys would have a lot in common. One time I said, you'll appreciate this, Phil. Other people won't so much, but I thought he did the Hawaii Ironman, and
Yep.
of course you have to qualify for that. You have
Right.
to get into it by doing okay in some other, go to Germany and do the German Ironman or something. And anyhow, he'd done that, and I thought his time was 10:50. Of course, the like Mark Allen, I think the record's like 8 hours and 10 minutes, something like that. Anyhow,
Yeah,
I
I
said,
think they've gone under 8 hours, I think now.
okay, I haven't been following. I used to do some sprint man triathlons myself. Anyway, so one time I said something about was introducing him, and I said something about he'd done triathlons, he'd even done a 10:50, and Marcus looked at me and sideways and said 10:08.
Uh,
So I mean, you know what that means. He was in pretty darn good shape to do 10, almost very close to 10 hours. I had my stroke on my exercise bike training for the senior games. So the one good thing about being athletic is I bet you looked at your recovery as your new training program.
I did, but like I said, this I can run somewhat. I wasn't, my right side with the break in the arm and the hip um, had really slowed me down. But the depression, I never had depression actually in my life, and didn't have it after my stroke. But now it's pretty bad, and there's financial problems that are huge, and so there's just a lot. I'm facing another surgery for that arm that I broke, so it just doesn't seem to end.
Well, Phil, we're glad you're here.
Does
Yeah.
this go for an hour or longer?
Well, we try and keep it to an hour. It sometimes goes a little longer. Sometimes people have things they have to do and drop out.
Right.
Um, if you shoot me a message on Messenger, Ralph Preston,
Mhm.
I'll put you in touch with Marcus. And because I think you guys would have a lot in common. How old are you, Phil?
58.
58?
Mhm.
Okay, you're right around the same age as Marcus. I think he might be, I'm 71, I think he's maybe 10 years younger than me, so he might be 3 years older than you. Hey, Trish, maybe we should talk about itchy back after stroke. Because I
Okay.
swear to God, I have a friend who gave me a back scratcher a couple of years ago, and like, I don't know what the deal is. So all of a sudden, I'm using it like 3 or 4 times a day, and I go up to the door jams, and
Yeah.
I don't know why my back's so itchy all of a sudden. I don't know whether it's the stroke thing particularly.
I've
Anyway,
never used one till I had my stroke, and I have one by my couch, by my bed, and in the kitchen. I have one everywhere.
you can't reach there as easily anymore. Plus,
Right.
there's a part of your back you just can't reach, period.
Yeah.
Even if you got 2 good hands. So, Phil, what would you say your biggest challenge has been? The mental aspect or the keeps raining and maybe you stepped away for a sec. Is it Phil, are you there? Nope, he stepped away. Okay, I was going to try and talk to him about what his biggest issues might be. Um, anyway, so it's one of the things we were talking about using a personal trainer or whatever. We're back to in a sense, one of the things that a good strategy, a best strategy, is getting homework or becoming your own physical therapist. Of course, you can't walk yourself with a gait belt, so that's out. I mean, you have to be, I don't know that you have to be that far along, but the less mobility you have, the harder it is to be your own physical therapist. It's easier if you're working on fine motor skills and improving your walk than it is on. I suppose it's the same. I was gonna say it's supposed to learning how to stand up and get your fingers moving at all.
Well, often I think about therapy for a stroke patient, the parallels between that and an athlete, how they train for an event or anything like that. And a long time ago, I said, for a stroke patient to get better and to improve, you have to have the heart and the mindset of an athlete.
I completely agree.
And we've just heard it again with Phil, that that mindset and that will of an athlete, the ability, the willingness to train and to suffer the uncomfortable, being uncomfortable training is vitally important. Going through your recovery and recovering your ability to move and do things, you're going to have to go through a lot of discomfort. Rebuilding your muscles. And I see a big problem with, you get a lot of people, elderly people, they just can't stand the discomfort that they have to go through to get stronger. And, unfortunately, the stronger you go into a stroke, the stronger you're going to come out.
That's
So you have
very
a lot
true.
of elderly people that are not very strong and they have a stroke, and it's just too tough for them to get back. So it's so important for physical exercise for anybody over 50 years old. I think you should increase your working out and your exercising rather than decreasing it.
Well, and the whole stroke recovery industries had to adapt because strokes are getting younger. 25 years ago, the
Mhm.
majority of strokes were people over 65. And if you have you know, if you're 80 something and you have a stroke, it's very different than if you're 30 something and you have a stroke because you don't have a lot of life in
Hello?
front of you. You already have are in some level of decline that you don't have the strength. And the industry, for lack of a better term, used to basically warehouse a lot of people who had strokes.
All right, thank you.
They didn't see any point in trying to rehabilitate them because they were older. Well, that doesn't work if you're 35. You might want to get back to work and work 30 years so you have some level of retirement or financial independence. You could want to have a family or have a young family. That you have responsibilities to. So it's very different as the landscape changes and more younger people seem to be having strokes.
Well, you bring up a good subject, and it came up last week, and I wanted to say something. And it's about taking supplements.
It's about what?
Taking supplements.
Oh, okay.
And I want to say, if you've had a stroke, you're too late. You should have taken this. You should have taken the health drink or the supplements when you're 30 and 40, not when you're 70 and you had a stroke. Because you had a stroke because of the cumulative effect of your bad habits. That's why most of us had the stroke. I mean, my diet was terrible. I drank 2 sodas a day. I had high blood pressure. I didn't do enough about it. And I should have changed my lifestyle at 30 or 40 rather than trying to change it at 60.
Right. Well,
That's my soapbox.
yeah, I'll get up on mine for a sec because I had mine due to high
Everybody,
blood pressure and not really wanting to get on blood pressure pills. Of course, now I am, and I had the stroke. Um, but I was in pretty good shape, and uh, I had it on my exercise bike, and I was a lifelong vegetarian. I did a lot of things right, but you can't ignore high blood pressure. Doesn't
Right.
doesn't take a lot of those uh, pre-existing possibilities to get you. It only takes one if it's blood pressure. Oh, we can see you now.
yep, hey, everybody.
Hey,
And that
Phil.
was blood pressure, I believe, and I had no warnings. It happened on a Friday, and the next day I was set to go out on a 5 or 6 hour bike ride, and obviously I never made it. But there were no warnings.
I didn't really get any either, other than I did have high blood pressure. So was your hemorrhagic stroke caused by blood pressure, do they believe? Not all are.
Well, they didn't. I don't think they really told me, or maybe I'm sure. I mean, maybe they did tell me, but I don't remember. The short term memory is zero since the stroke.
Are you on blood pressure medicine?
I'm on so much medicine, Ralph. Yeah, blood pressure.
Hmm.
Uh,
But just the fact that you're on blood pressure medicine doesn't mean that blood pressure caused your. It did in my case because I had high blood pressure, and I guess the weak part of my brain and right here on the right side blew up. But some people have AVMs, vein malformations, um, and they can cause strokes due to high blood pressure or just giving way at some point in time.
Yeah, I took nothing before. Nothing. I was taking no medicine really all my life. Except maybe when you have a sickness, you take an antibiotic. But I didn't take anything, and now I'm taking shit 4 times a day. I have to take all these different pills.
Well, one thing that I did that a lot of stroke survivors do is they tend to like, you know, okay, here's an example. So I was on a blood pressure medicine that made my ankles swell. What did they want to do? They want to put me on a diuretic. They wanted to add a pill. I said, no, I'm not adding a pill. There are, 1,000 blood pressure medicines. Let's just find one that doesn't make my ankles swell. So that's what we did. So,
Amlodipine?
pardon?
Amlodipine?
Yep, amlodipine.
I wear
Guaranteed.
I wear compression socks. That's how I fight that battle.
Well, it's interesting because it's funny when when you learn some of this stuff, I try and be a kind of depository of everything I've learned and everything that I read. So I was chatting with a friend on Messenger the other day, and she said, "What would make my ankles swell?" And I said, "Is your affected ankle, is it both? And is your affected ankle worse?" She said, "Yes and yes." And I said, "Are you on blood pressure medicine?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "What kind?" She said, "3." I'm trying to find out what kind. So I said, "Well, what 3?" And she listed amlodipine. And I said, "Bingo. There you go." I mean, she was just shocked that I could tell her what was making her ankles swollen. That she was also on
So
Cinepril. That'll give you a dry cough. So I asked her if she had a dry cough. She said no. But the point of this is a lot of people do a pill review with their doctor.
Yes.
See if they can get off of some of them, see if they're all necessary. One of the ones that really gets me is all doctors, not all doctors, but the vast majority of doctors seem to think that all stroke survivors, regardless of age, cholesterol levels, type of stroke, whatever, they stick us all on statins. I got a guy, the one that lost his leg that I took to 150 doctor's appointments. His cholesterol's 160, and he's got a pretty good dose of the good ones. And they got him on the statin. So I've asked his diabetes doctor like 3 times, why do you have him on the statins? Well, he had a stroke. That's the only answer I can get. So there's some doctors that think every person in the world should be on statins, but there are some people
Yep.
who think
You,
statins.
you are correct. I'll tell you what, every time I go to a doctor's appointment, my first question to the doctor is there any of these meds I can get off of? I mean, I'm on 25 different prescriptions,
Wow.
and the statins, to the point they stopped them. My cholesterol was like rock star level. And so they took me off the statins. But to your point, they put you on the statins because you had a stroke. Everybody's got to be on a statin. But no, that's not the case.
I was lucky they didn't put me on one. Of course, I'm a lifelong vegetarian, so I've had cholesterol reports of like 130 with 65 of the good ones. That's a 2-to-1 ratio. You're allowed 250 they consider good. That's a 4-to-1 ratio. So a 2-to-1 ratio of the good ones is better. So for some reason they didn't stick me on them. If they had, I would have, been questioning it. So I'm not trying to get you, Phil, I'm just saying one thing that you mentioned a lot of pills. One thing that a lot of people do is they try and, like Dennis said, every time he goes, he tries to see what he can get off of.
Right.
I went
And
to
Ralph, if I may, let's go back to that swollen leg question.
Okay.
I had a problem with a swollen leg in my affected leg.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, after seeing like 4 different doctors, my cardiologist took a sonogram of my leg and they found a DVT. And I had other doctors telling me to wear compression socks. And the guy said, no, that's the last thing you want to do with a DVT.
Yeah, it'll
You
squeeze
know, but
it out and throw a clot.
yeah, let's squeeze the clot loose. You know, and it did break off, and I did have I have a minor PE, very, very minor. It's almost insignificant. And you know, so I found, and my advice to all the new stroke survivors is you have to be your own best health advocate. Ask questions and ask more questions. And if you don't like the answers or you're not getting answers, demand answers. You know, you have to look out for yourself because, you know, unfortunately, the medical profession it is what it is, and it's terrible. You know, the healthcare system in the USA anyway is ridiculous. And they follow a script sometimes that, you know, doesn't apply to everybody. So, I mean, I know my doctors think I'm a pain in the ass, but that's okay. But I'll question and question and question and question. And if I don't like the answer, I'll question another doctor. You know, I recently, I'm next month, I'm going to a brand new neurologist just because I want to mix it up a little bit. You know, my neurologist hasn't told me anything of any value for 2 years. So I'm going to go to a brand new neurologist and lay everything out. Say, where are we going with this? You know, what's happening, what's not happening, what should be happening. We'll talk about these meds and just to mix it up a little bit. And I got a pain management doctor who does nothing but prescribe meds. And I'm not comfortable with that either. You know, I do not like to take pain meds, and even he's got me on gabapentin and baclofen and all that, which is somewhat standard, but you know, nothing's working. So what's next? I'm going to go to a new pain management doctor too, just to kind of mix it up a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to get up on my soapbox because I'm not a big fan of gabapentin. It's also known as Neurontin. Gabapentin's the generic and Neurontin is the brand name.
Right.
And a couple reasons. They put me on it for paresthesia in my hand. My hand feels like it's asleep still, 13 years, and same with my face. I don't have it in my leg at all, but so it knocked out about a third of it. And I'm thinking, I'm taking 6. They didn't have the 200s and 300s way back then when I had my stroke 13 years ago. So I was taking 6 100 milligram pills a day, and I didn't like that. If it had been, I probably would have felt differently if it had been like 200-300s, but all those pills, I saw them every day. And then, like I said, it knocked out about a third. So I still had 2/3 of it I was living with. So then somebody told me it was addictive. And I went, really? Oh, yeah,
Yep.
highly addictive. And when you want to get off of it, they have to wean you off of it. And I did wean off of it under a doctor's direction. And yeah, the paresthesia increased slightly, but over the years I've just gotten to where I don't focus on it. I can, I kind of tune it out. I mean, it's always there, but I don't, let it bother me. But the main reason I don't like gabapentin is it's a seizure medicine that's being used off-label. And as a seizure medicine, it works by blocking neurons. Does that sound like a problem to you? It does to me. We're trying to make connections. We're trying to get neurons to fire, and they're giving us something that blocks neurons. I have a couple of articles. I kind of stay out of this in the groups because I don't really want to be anti anything. But
No, and we're not doctors. So we
Pardon?
got to be careful with medicines. We're not doctors. We've had that discussion before.
You know that I always put I'm not a doctor, and I always say, see your doctor. I'll put see your physical therapist, but I know a lot of people have run out of insurance. I know that everyone has a doctor, So I always say, yeah, talk to your doctor. We're just stroke survivors. I can tell you what happened to me, but no, we shouldn't be giving medical advice.
No,
And
you know how I feel about that.
oh, I do. In fact, I go on some posts and I put, "Don't listen to anybody here, including me." Um, you
We
know,
all feel the same about seeing doctors and following doctors. Well, not so much following doctors' advice, but do not follow another stroke patient's advice
right?
because they don't see your entire chart. They don't understand your entire history.
No,
And, what's good for one person is not good for the next.
that's
Correct.
very true.
I had a doctor insist on putting me on an aspirin regimen. And I had a hemorrhagic stroke. Well, last thing you want to give a hemorrhagic stroke patient is a blood thinner. So I came home and I called my neurologist that did my brain surgery, talked to his nurse, and she called me back a half hour later. She goes, "We don't really advise it." And I said, "Well, what about getting a new doctor?" She sort of just said, mm-hmm. She didn't go say, "Yeah, you should," but I dropped that doctor like a hot potato
I've dropped,
because
I've dropped several myself when they, if they aren't giving you information, I find somebody else.
Yep.
That's what
I
you're
have
doing.
a
The new
nurse
neuro.
practitioner too who wants to give me aspirin, but I'm saying you got to look at the whole thing, you know. And I take one medicine, can't think of the name, Libetadol. Well, it's really helping my blood pressure, but sometimes I'm only beating 45 beats per minute. So because of that, so trying to balance all this stuff out is, and it's all just a guessing game. There's no real science to it; it's just a guessing game.
Well, I mean, I had the same thing. They had me on 2 blood pressure medicines, and one of them slowed down your heart. And as you get older, your heart does slow down. Well, so I'm all of a sudden getting readings in the 50s, and I don't like it. So I go to my doctor and I say, I don't like these readings in the 50s. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. We don't worry about it till it gets into the 40s. I said, I don't want to wait till it gets into the 40s.
Well, I'm in the
So,
40s, and that's why I fall asleep all the time.
yeah, it's hard. Yeah. No, I know because I live like that. And I also found out that any guys out there, here's a public service announcement for anybody with bladder issues. As guys get older, we all have bladder issues. So they stick you on something called Flomax. Well, Flomax is a diuretic, and it acts like a blood pressure pill. And I kept having these low blood pressure, and between the two BP meds and the Flomax, I was not only having slower heart rate, but low blood pressure. And there you go, yawning, see, because your heart's not pumping enough. Um, I had some blood pressure readings. I had a 59/39.
Wow.
You read that right. There are no ones in front of it. 59/39. You can't stand up. Same way unless you're, Lance Armstrong, who has a resting heartbeat in the 40s because he has an enlarged heart, not bad. He has he was born with a larger than normal heart, and he's a athlete, you know. Uh, I broke my pinky in a bike accident when I was 45, and I had to have it operated on. I went to the pre-op thing, and they got a resting heartbeat on me of like 48, and they asked me about it, and they asked me if I was athletic, and I said yeah, and they said, oh, okay. Um, so yeah, you have to back to Joe, what we always talk about, which is you have to be your own patient advocate because nobody's looking out for you, and the
Right.
system's fragmented. They're all shards of glass out there. They're not connected into a window pane or anything. It's like a broken window.
Well, with like my Libetadol, I'm supposed to take 2 pills a day, and I've learned to take my 2 pills a day at lunch and at dinner, and not in the morning. because I want my blood pressure to be up a little bit my heart rate to be up a little bit during the day while I'm trying to do things, and I'm trying to be awake. So when you take it is also important.
Very, very much so. Because what happened with me was I turned up with AFib, went to the hospital. I checked myself in the hospital because it was going to be 4 months before I could see a cardiologist. And I said, I know how to see a cardiologist today. And I went to the ER. And of course, I knew I had irregular heartbeat, and I knew they were going to find it, and I knew they would keep me overnight, and I knew I'd see a cardiologist, and I did, and they took me off of everything. That's how I ended up on amlodipine, but they also took me off that Flomax, and all of a sudden, I wasn't having these low blood pressure events. The other thing was I went to an electrocardiologist who's a specialist in the electrical signals that control your heart that are involved in irregular heartbeats and things. And he suggested taking the BP pill at night. And I was going, but I'm getting these low blood pressure readings at night. He said, well, apparently with you, it's taking some number of hours, to take effect. So I didn't really, because I'd been getting these low readings at night, I didn't really want to take it at night. So what I did for a while was I took it when I'd get up to pee at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd take it. And then eventually after I did that a while, I started thinking, well, I haven't woken up dead yet, so it must be working. And so I actually started taking it when I go to bed, and that works a lot better. I haven't had the low blood pressure events because I was taking it in the morning previous to that. So, see who dropped out. Dennis dropped out.
I'm gonna have to drop out too.
Yeah, well, we probably all ought to drop out. It's been an hour.